All right, hopefully you have been keeping up on the 12 emotions of Christmas. Today we're going to be talking about loneliness. Now, all of us have experienced loneliness at one point in our life, and I feel like that's an emotion that's going to be exacerbated or has the potential to be exacerbated in so many people's lives this year for Christmas 2020 with the pandemic and them asking us to avoid gathering in large groups, being separated from people that we love. No doubt about it that a lot of us are experiencing genuine loneliness. So let's talk about what loneliness is, sometimes what causes it, but more importantly, then let's talk about some tips to overcome loneliness in this season. So loneliness by definition is an unpleasant emotional response to perceived isolation. So let me kind of explain that for a minute, because I think a lot of times we confuse the emotion of loneliness with the reality of solitude. So what that means is, as it's saying, it's an emotional response to a perceived isolation, meaning there are times when we are in a group of people, we are not experiencing solitude, yet we feel very lonely. So when we're talking about loneliness, I'm not just talking about being isolated from people. I'm talking about even when we are with people, when we are experiencing that feeling of loneliness and a feeling of isolation, like I'm outside of everything that's going on. I'm not feeling connected with. It also goes on to say that loneliness is described as a social pain. So again, that connects with the fact that we have this desire, we have a longing to feel a connection. A lot of scientists say that loneliness is a psychological mechanism that motivates individuals to seek social connections. Now, you and I both know that this lines up with our biblical design, that we are designed for connection, first and foremost, so that we would live our lives connected with God, that we would feel a connection with ourselves, and therefore then also feel a connection with people around us. So if you think back with me in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, they communed with the Lord. There was an intimacy there. There was a connection, and that was the design. It was the plan that God had in mind for man all along, that we would walk in intimacy and in connection with Him and with one another. So it's important that we understand that a lot of times short-term loneliness is what motivates us to seek that connection, which is one of the greatest human needs that we have, because again, it is a part of our design. So as a leader, I know I often experience a feeling of loneliness, feeling like nobody can connect with what I'm feeling, what I'm going through. Oftentimes we can't necessarily share all the things we're going through. So there's a lot of different reasons why we would experience loneliness, but at its core, it is the lack of feeling connected with. And a lot of times it's because we really aren't connecting with people. So that's going to take us to our tips. Because I believe that a lot of loneliness is because we have chosen to isolate ourselves. Meaning I can be in a room full of people, but I choose to isolate myself, and therefore I feel lonely. I act lonely, and therefore I am treated as a lonely person. I am treated like I'm teaching and training people to treat me, which is don't talk to me, I don't want to connect. A lot of social cues like keeping your eyes down, not engaging in conversation. Y'all, the phone. I tell my kids all the time, if you're sitting over in a room and you're looking at your phone and you have your head down, you are putting out a signal that says, don't connect with me. So let's talk about some specific tips. I've given you some ideas, but specifically tip 1 is choose to connect with God. So all of these are going to start with choose to connect. Choose to connect. Choose to connect, because a lot of our loneliness is because we are not choosing to connect. Now remember, I'm not talking about solitude. When we're experiencing solitude, it is possible for us to still choose to connect, and it's possible for us to be isolated and in solitude but still feel connection, meaning I can be alone, but I can be alone but I don't feel lonely. So that's that difference there. But first, I have to choose to connect with God. I talked earlier about how we are designed to walk in communion with the Lord. There is a stirring within us to connect with God. It was a part of His original design. And when we come into the knowledge of Jesus Christ as our Savior, we are restored back into the Garden of Eden, and our soul longs for that connection with God. And so a lot of times when we're experiencing connection with people, but we're still feeling very lonely, it's because we have not connected with God first. So all of these videos, you can refer to almost any one of these videos, and it's going to teach and train you and give you practical ways to actually connect with God. That's what my whole life is all about, teaching you how to walk in intimacy with God. So that's tip 1, connect with God. Tip 2 is connect with yourself. A lot of times we are not connected, we're not having conversation, we're not aware of what we're thinking, we're not aware of what we're feeling. We are completely disconnected from ourselves, and we have to connect with ourselves, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, like yourself. I know my mom always says she was retired and lived alone for a long time, and people were like, don't you get lonely? And she was like, no, I enjoy my own company. I like myself. And that's so awesome. I love that. It is time for us to learn to enjoy our own company so that you can be alone, but you don't feel lonely because you are connected with God and you are connected with yourself. And of course, tip 3 is choose to connect with others. Now, this requires sometimes a lot of confidence, and that confidence comes as you're connecting with God and you're connecting with yourself, that you will walk in greater confidence to be able to say, I'm going to choose to connect with somebody. That means I'm going to make eye contact, I'm going to put my head up, I'm going to engage in a conversation, I'm going to go sit where people are sitting. I'm not going to isolate myself, but I'm going to choose to connect. If you're in a place where you're by yourself and you're in solitude, choose to connect. Make a phone call. Connect with somebody via Zoom. I understand that we are in a peculiar season, but there are ways you can connect, and that's going to require you to say, I'm not going to sit here in loneliness. I'm not going to sit here in my self-pity, but I am going to choose to connect, first and foremost with God, secondly with myself, and then with others. So these are your quick tips on how to overcome loneliness during this Christmas season 2020. And remember, enforcing purpose, it starts with you.